Casino gambling, rejected by Florida voters 3 times between 1978 and 94. Times have changed. 37 states allow gambling in some form. In Florida, lawmakers this spring may approve casino gambling resorts. How did this shift in attitude occur? And what are its impacts?
It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for the evening, a colleague whose passion for education and dedication to student success has impressed me since the first day I met her almost 5 years ago. As Dean of the College of Policy, Ethics, and Legal Studies at St. Petersburg College, she is and has been a mentor to hundreds of faculty members and an inspiring role model for thousands of students pursuing careers in the law, government, or public service. An attorney, she has served as president of the Clearwater Bar Association and as commissioner on the Florida Bar's Special Commission on Paralegal Regulation. She recently was appointed by the president of the Florida Bar to the Commission on the Future of the Profession, Vision 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Susan Demers.
Thank you, and I want to add my welcome to Dr. Oliver's and to Dave's, and I want to particularly say to our students, I'm thrilled that you're here this evening. This is an interesting and important topic, and part of what makes it interesting is that it's really nuanced. There's lots and lots of things to consider, lots of different angles to look at, and so I'm thrilled you're here to start looking at a complicated topic like this one. The question before us tonight is, should Florida expand gambling, obviously we have it in some places, to include Las Vegas-type casinos? So we have 2 speakers with us this evening who are experts, and they're going to give you some perspective. Now keep in mind, we have artificially divided a complicated question into 2 sides. There are lots of aspects to any policy question, but tonight the question before us is the yay or nay on expansion of gambling to include casino-type gambling. So first, I want to introduce Mr. David Blankenhorn, who is the founder and president of the Institute for American Values, a nonpartisan organization whose mission is to study and strengthen civil society. He will speak this evening in opposition to expansion of casino gambling. So, Mr. Blankenhorn, if you would join us on stage right, audience left. See, you're not to take any position from that. No matter which way you look at it, you're on the right or left. It all depends on perspective, right? So with that, Mr. Nick Rossi will be arguing. He's the founding member of the Capital City Consulting and a lobbyist for the gaming industry, and he'll defend the expansion of casino gambling, or perhaps propose expansion of casino gambling, depending upon your perspective, right? Who's defending, who's proposing, what the proposal is. So, what we've had, the format we're going to have here this evening is each presenter will present for 15 minutes, and Jacqueline's on the clock right there, right? All righty. So our contract is that each presenter will present for 15 minutes, and after that, I think we'll revisit our poll and see whether or not you have any change of heart or perhaps more articulated feelings. You've developed a point of view where you were previously undecided, and then we'll dig in a little more with questions. I may have a couple, but I am fairly certain there will be those from the audience as well. And we'll take a little break in between for some table talk, because the whole point of Village Square is that we not only listen to people talk, but that we expand our own thought process by articulating our ideas, our policy point of view with the people that we share the table with. And the best way to sort of engender civil discourse is to break bread with each other. Sharing a meal really makes things different, and that we think is one of the unique aspects of Village Square. So with that, Mr. Nick Iorassi will join us up here. Mr. Iorassi. And I think, Mr. Blankenhorn, I think you're first up. Oh, I'm sorry, Nick. Okay.
I drew the short straw.
Is that it? All right. Well, you know, rebuttal is always more fun.
Yes.
So, all right.
Thank you, Dean. I appreciate it. And thanks, everyone. It's great to be here with you all. I made the trip down from Tallahassee today, and I will say that the chocolate cake alone has made the trip worth it. But I'm expecting a lively and fun debate as well. And I want to thank David for inviting me down here, and Provost, thanks for having me. And David, I look forward to a lively debate. And Dean, hopefully you don't have to jump in between us too much when we go at each other. I don't think we'll try and keep this very civil. As was pointed out, my name is Nick Irossi. I'm with Capital City Consulting in Tallahassee, and I've been a lobbyist up there for about 15 years. I like to call it a government affairs consultant because lobbyist has such a bad connotation, or at least that's what I tell my mom I do for a living, is a government affairs consultant. And for those of you who snicker, yes, we do have mothers, lobbyists. But I've been doing work on public policy up there, both on staff and then as a lobbyist for a number of years. We represent a variety of issues, but I'm here today to talk about a couple clients that I do work for up there on the gaming sector and been doing work for quite a long time, so I'm very familiar with the public policy surrounding gaming. I'm not here specifically on any given client or on any particular position except for to talk about the gaming interest in general and what's maybe coming down the pipe this 2015 session, how it may impact your community, and what the public policy reasons are for expanding gaming, I will say, in the right ways. So I should have a PowerPoint, and it looks like that's it up there. Typically, I like to start off by saying, number one, you generally have three groups of people when it comes to these types of gaming debates. You first have the hell no people. I don't want any gaming in the state of Florida. And the first thing I usually say to them is, it's too late. We have a lot of it here. In fact, Florida, depending on the matrix that you use, is the third or fourth largest gaming state in the country. But what's unique about this state than other states is that we probably have the most of the least quality gaming of any state in the union. And that's primarily due to our regulatory structure. And it's one of the things we'll talk about today, how to improve that so that you can extract the benefits from a gaming market in a tourist-based economy as opposed to the current structure that we have today. The second group that we typically have are the hell yes people. We want Vegas here. We want to be able to go to casinos to recreate ourselves as responsible adults and to enjoy all the benefits and excitement that surround a casino, not to mention the economic benefits, the jobs, and the stimulus that is created from such a large-scale capital investment and also job creation from those. And then you have the in-between crowd who just isn't really sure. They're not big proponents of gaming. They're not necessarily philosophically against it, but they want to see how it's going to be done in order to make a determination of whether they'd be supportive or not. And so I'm here to tell you a little bit about, if done correctly, if regulated properly, this can be a fun and responsible way for adults to recreate themselves while drawing people in from out of state and out of country to bring in tourism dollars, jobs, create an economic benefit. So those are the three categories of people. I saw the poll a little bit earlier, and I got to say the pressure's really on me right now because 50% have already said they want them. So at the end, if we do a poll and that drops, then I really screwed up here when I'm trying to do my job. So, so we'll go to I guess I've got screens everywhere, so I don't necessarily need to look behind me. So the current Florida gaming market, 27 active pari-mutuels, and for those of you who have been living under a rock in Florida for the last 50 years, a pari-mutuel is a horse track, a dog track, or a high life fronton. We are riddled with them. They are in most of the counties throughout the state. You have them in the Bay Area here, lots in South Florida, but also North and Central Florida. They have struggled over the last decade and a half, primarily because the types of gaming, live racing, whether it be thoroughbreds, whether it be greyhound racing, or of course High they have struggled primarily because there's a lot of competing entertainment interests out there right now, and these are not meeting the needs of Floridians. The other significant gaming, and when we talk about should we have Las Vegas casino-style gaming in the state of Florida, we actually already do. You have one not too far from here. It's the Seminole Hard Rock Casino in Tampa. There's 4 more Seminole casinos in Broward County, One is the Hollywood Hard Rock, which is kind of the premier one, but they have several others in the area, all with Las Vegas-style Class 3 games. In addition to that, in Dade and Broward County in particular, the pari-mutuels there, via constitutional amendment, have Class 3 slots. So those 8 facilities there have Las Vegas-style slot machines. So we already have it here, actually, and you have actually one of the most profitable casinos in the world here in Tampa, believe it or not, because of the lack of competition in the area. The Tampa Hard Rock generates over $1 billion in gaming revenue a year, over $1 billion a year. They're actually the 6th largest casino floor in the world, and I think the last estimate I looked at, they were number 2 in the country as far as gaming revenue goes. So you take Atlantic City, Las Vegas, Pennsylvania, California, all these big casinos that are around the country, and your hometown casino right here actually is significantly more profitable than all of those. I don't know where to point this thing. I'm kind of waving it around. Here's a map of where the pari-mutuel facilities are in Florida right now. As you can see, very diverse. A lot of concentration in South Florida, but when you get out of there, they're pretty evenly spread throughout the state of Florida. I just show you this slide in order to just express to you again, we are a significant gaming state. The question isn't whether to have gaming in Florida, it's what type of gaming are we looking for. Tribal facilities that we discussed earlier, except for the Immokalee, the Seminole tribe owns these others. There's several in the Fort Lauderdale, Broward County area, one in Fort Pierce and one in Brighton, and then of course the one in Tampa that we discussed here. So primarily South Florida, both West and East Coast, Central and South Florida. Who wants to be in the market now? So 2015, our legislative session starts in March. We're already having committee meetings right now, and you've got several parties who want to be in the gaming market in Florida. Why? Because it's a significant market. Number one, we're now the 3rd largest state in the country. The gaming appetite here is significant. When you look at the billions of dollars now that is spent on gaming, from the $4 billion spent on the state lottery, which yes, the lottery is gaming, $4 billion spent on the lottery right now, over $2 billion at the tribal facilities here. A couple, the tracks account for approximately $500 million more dollars. So it is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and you have companies that are both international and out-of-state companies, as well as the in-state companies who want to come here to compete. Destination resorts is probably the big ones that you see. Las Vegas-style casinos like Las Vegas Sands, which is the Venetian and the Palazzo, if you've been to Las Vegas. How many people here have been to Las Vegas? So about 40% probably of you. So those type of facilities have you seen, multi-billion-dollar investments. They're cities within themselves. They employ 5,000 to 10,000 people each, generate incredible amounts of tax revenue and economic activity. Those type of facilities, they are competing to try and come here primarily because of the fact that they believe, for several reasons, Florida is a great market for them to come to, particularly the urban settings in South Florida, but even Tampa, because of the culture here, the tourism market here, and they can capitalize on the weather and in the environment here to draw people in from out of state and out of country. And these type of facilities particularly cater to out-of-town visitors. They're less about locals coming in and more about trying to get people in a car or on an airplane to fly to the state or drive to the state and come visit. So you'll see iconic architecture with the restaurants and bars and clubs, a luxury hotel, a nice casino, a lot of convention and meeting space. Companies like to go to Las Vegas for a reason. Las Vegas is the #1 convention market in the United States of America, not because people don't like to go there. And the reason people like to go there is mainly because of the after-hours entertainment. You go and you sit in a convention center for 8 hours during the day, and the last thing you want to do is be bored when you get out of there after being bored the entire day. So shows, gaming, restaurants, concerts, those are the reasons why people are booking conventions in Las Vegas and why it's so popular. We have a great convention booking place in Orlando here, and the reason for there is different. Obviously, it's more family-oriented, less adult-oriented, but the infrastructure of the entertainment industry, the theme park industry there is what draws people into the Orlando area. So it's kind of, if you build it, they will come, and these type of facilities want to build a multi-billion-dollar resort so that people from out of state, out of country look at it and say, you know what, I got to go see that place. And that's what draws in that tourism. What do the gaming proponents want? The destination resorts, they're looking for a limited number, 1 to 2 destination resort permits to be competitively billed to build primarily in the South Florida area is where they're looking. The tribal facilities, who have a pretty good deal right now, they're doing over $2 billion a year in revenue and paying about an effective 12% tax rate, want to keep status quo or increase what they're paying the state in order to maintain the level of exclusivity that they have. And then the Dade and Broward pari-mutuals are saying we can't compete with the tribal facilities without expanded card games and a lower tax rate, and we're going to die off if you don't give us a lower tax rate and expanded games to compete. And then the other pari-mutuals, including the ones in this area, are just looking for something, quite frankly, to hang on because they're trying to compete with a live racing product that people just aren't going to go see anymore. Who doesn't want more gambling in the state of Florida? The number one opponent to gaming in the state of Florida, for competitive reasons, obviously, is Disney. The theme park industry in general has not wanted facilities to be built that they feel will compete with their product in the state. Status quo is good for them and is perfectly understandable. So they're leading the effort right now to fight any expansion of gaming, whether it be a destination resort or whether it be at the pari-mutual level. We talked about Disney. The Florida Chamber of Commerce has gotten on board mainly because of Disney to help fight the effort. A group called No Casinos, led by John Sawinski, good friend out of Orlando. I keep telling him he needs to change the name to No More Casinos. Religious groups, obviously for philosophical reasons and religious reasons, law enforcement groups who are afraid of crime, and then the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, which we'll talk about, who are afraid that the competition from the restaurants and the casinos could harm their business. So 2015 session is very important really for one reason, and that's the Tribal Casino Gaming Compact is set to expire in July. So the legislature has to either reenact, and the governor have to renegotiate and reenact the Tribal Gaming Facility Compact, or the tribe, and the Hard Rock I'm talking about, would have to technically remove their table games in August. So this creates an opportunity for debate for folks to look at expansion opportunities, whether it be destination resorts or at the pari-mutuel facilities. Right now, trying to find out determine what's going to happen. It's too early to say, but what I would encourage everyone to think of is not, do you allow destination resorts or casino-style gaming in the state of Florida? It's here. What we need to do is regulate it more efficiently with a regulatory commission similar to what Nevada, Pennsylvania, New Jersey do, strict regulation, and then determine where to best place these types of facilities near urban centers that are going to draw the most visitation from out of state and out of country. There's no sense in putting slots parlors throughout the state. They're going to draw money out of the local economy. Discretionary dollars are spent by consumers every day, whether it be at a retail establishment or a restaurant or other entertainment options that they have in the city. That's not what we need to be doing as far as authorizing resorts. What we need to be doing is building things that people want to come to from out of state to attract new money, new capital to the state of Florida, new visitation, which will actually improve the economy of the surrounding area and of the state. Because when you have an influx of 1 million people, let's say, to the state of Florida to attend conventions and visit a integrated or destination resort, those people just don't stay in the facility. They go into the community. They spend money at the restaurants. They go visit the beaches. They visit local retail and shopping establishments. They go visit the theme parks when they're here on a business trip. It's a catalyst. It's a draw. It's an economic driver. And I'll look forward to hearing what David has, and I'll be happy to answer any questions when we wrap this up. But don't think casinos on every corner, because nobody's proposing that. Quite frankly, what most folks are just proposing is give an opportunity to competitively bid for a limited number of facilities in the state and allow the local governments, allow the constituents of those cities to decide whether they want it there before it being placed there. So it's very targeted, very strategic, and only placed in the markets that are best suited for it and that would vote to approve and want it. So thank you for listening.
So thank you, Nick. And so we're going to ask David to speak to the anti-gambling perspective at this point. So it's all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm not against gambling. You know, if you want to bet on who's going to win the Super Bowl on Sunday, or if you want to go home and play poker with your friends, or, you know, flip a coin tonight, maybe Nick and I will flip a coin and we'll bet on heads or tails. God bless us all. We should be able to gamble all day, every day like that to our heart's content. So private recreational gambling is not what I'm here to be against. What I'm here to be against is a specific activity where the government, your government, in order to get a lot of money, makes a deal with the companies that Nick represents to set up casinos, basically big places filled with slot machines to take money from people who can least afford it. That's what I'm against. Using these rigged games of chance to basically take money out of people's pockets to give it to the government. And I don't even think it deserves to be called gambling, since, you know, the games are rigged. But I just wanted to start by saying I'm not against gambling. I'm against this one activity where your government, in your name, in the name of citizenship, makes these alliances with the gambling companies out of Las Vegas to set up these casinos, and they get about 30% of the take. In the old days, you've seen the movies, in the old days at the casinos, they would put the money in the suitcases and take them to the mob bosses in Kansas City or New York, and now they just do the same thing, they just take it to the government. That's how this works. So that's what I think is just really not a good idea at all, at any possible level. So I want to list 4 or 5 reasons why I think this is really just a terrible idea for you here in Florida, for me in my home state of New York, and anywhere in the country. Number one, it's terribly wasteful. Casinos don't produce anything. If you open up a tire factory, you know, you're going to make tires. If you open up a hamburger stand, you're going to make hamburgers. But if you open up a casino, you don't make anything. Nothing gets produced. The only thing that happens is people come in there, put their money in the machines, and that's the end of the story. So it's an economically sterile activity. That's why the Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Samuelson, in his classic textbook, I'm sure some of you students read this textbook in your classes, he says gambling is a sterile activity. It does not produce growth. Now, when Nick talked about producing jobs and economic activity, you notice that he didn't cite a single study because no study exists showing that casinos produce economic growth or create jobs. No study exists. That's why he didn't cite one. What happens is, do the people who build the buildings and the people who work in the casinos, do they have jobs? Yes, they have jobs, but economists don't look at that. That's just PR talk you hear from the industry. What real economists look at is what is the economic impact on the community over time. If I was to open up a crack house on this campus and employ some of you students to sell drugs, I would be, quote, creating jobs, right? But what would be the overall economic impact on the community over time? And here, the actual people who study this are crystal clear. It's negative. It's a negative impact. For the jobs that get created and the economic activity that get produced, more gets lost because you have a sterile activity that's essentially exploitative in nature. It's a kind of a strip mining activity that doesn't produce anything of value, and it's a terrible waste. So forget this stuff about jobs and economic growth. It's bogus, bogus, bogus. You know, you can't win if you're betting against a slot machine. You're betting against a computer that's been programmed to cause you to lose. So forget about winning. One spin might win. You might even win more than you lose on one night. But no steady player ever wins against a slot machine. And despite all this talk you hear about Las Vegas-style destination resorts, it's just PR talk. 75% of all the floor space on casinos, including in Las Vegas, is for slot machines. 80% of all the revenue in the country from casinos comes from slot machines. Slot machines, slot machines, slot machines. That's what you're going to have. Lots and lots of slot machines. If there's a restaurants or shows nearby, fine, do that. Nobody's against any of that. But what we're talking about is, do you want all these slot machines that cheat people out of their money? Because you can't win. It's just a cheating thing. It preys upon unwary and vulnerable people. It doesn't produce any activity. It doesn't produce any productive activity for anybody. And it takes from people who can least afford it. You know, I've spent a lot of time in these places. I bet a lot of you maybe haven't, because if you're a highly educated person, or if you are in the upper income group in the society, you don't go to these places. The people who own them certainly don't put their money in these crazy machines. Lower income people, people on fixed incomes, immigrants, a lot of older people, particularly older women who have, you know, a lot of people who are lonely, a lot of people who are depressed or feel they're suffering in some way and they're vulnerable. They go to these places and there's nothing happy about them. Go to some of them sometime and just see what you see. A lot of people in wheelchairs and so forth, and putting their money into these machines, putting their cards into these machines. It's depressing. And it's a transfer program from the have-nots to the haves. Because the only reason they exist there at all is because government wants the money. So it's taking money from the lower half of society in order to keep property taxes at a lower rate for the upper half of society. That's the only reason we have them. And the reason I'm not debating an actual, you know, grassroots problem, I'm debating someone here from the industry, is because there's no grassroots demand for these things. The people who want them are the owners of the casinos, the people who Nick works for. Obviously, they want them. It's billions of dollars for them. And the government wants them. That's why they're interested in it, because for them it's like all this free money comes their way. But how does it come there? What does it do to the community? And what fibs get told us about the benefits it's going to bring? That's what I object to in the name of citizenship. You know, this being done in our name as citizens is what makes me genuinely morally outraged. These things bring all kinds of social problems. The literature is filled with this stuff. I'll just name one. Nick mentioned, and I thought a very, you know, balanced presentation he gave. He listed the people who oppose it. He said, the police oppose it. Well, why do you think the police oppose these things? But here's a statistic for you. The best studies we have, 15 or 18 of the best independent studies we have, tell you that between 35 and 50% of all the money that casinos make come from problem gamblers, people that are hurting themselves and their family members and their neighbors, people that are doing damage to themselves and those around them through excessive gambling. So that's between, depending on the study, between 35 and, say, the upper end, maybe 45 or 50% of all casino money comes from these people who are obviously in trouble, hurting themselves. I mean, how many industries can you say that of? I mean, even the liquor industry or the cigarette, you know, what if half of the people who drank alcohol were alcoholics? I mean, you know, in other words, it's the business model of these people depends upon taking money from vulnerable people who are obviously out of control in this situation. So ethically, is this what we want? Do you want this done in your name under the rubric of citizenship? To get tax money, for goodness sakes, to pay for social services? This is the way we want to do it? It's the worst possible way to raise taxes, because for every dollar you give a casino, 80% of it goes to the people that Nick works for. And the government gets maybe 20, maybe 25, maybe somewhere in that percentage. So as a way to tax people, 2/3 of the money doesn't even go to the government. It just goes into the pockets of the casino owners. So if you want to tax people to pay for our government, there are so many ways to do it that are more fair, more progressive, more transparent, and less predatory, just predatory than this. Because when these people come into their communities, they are not coming in there as philanthropists wanting to give you jobs and provide you entertainment. They are coming in as predators that want to take the money out of your pockets. And they do. They do. And they give 25 or 30% of it to the government in this devil's bargain that our policy people have developed in order to what? In order to pay for government without and still say they don't raise taxes. So I don't know, if that doesn't make you mad, I think you should just recheck things, because it really, to me, is a terrible situation. And I don't care how much of it's already here. We don't, what, because some of it's here and harming people now, we have to have more of it to harm people in the future? That makes no sense. So I don't care that, well, it's already in Florida, it's already in, yes, it is. I wish none of it was anywhere. But the fact that some of it's already there, hurting people, is not the reason to have more of it. Also, Nick mentioned that this is all supposed to be about not so much the local people gambling, but out-of-state people gambling. But I can just tell you, I grew up in Mississippi, and I now live in New York. The gambling people, they say this everywhere. Everywhere they go, they say these are destined. We're going to get out-of-state people. We're not going to hurt and rip off and just basically take money for nothing in return from local people. It's all going to be out-of-state people that we're going to do this to. They say this all the time, everywhere. Meanwhile, back on planet Earth, the studies show that most of the people who go to casinos live within a 75-mile radius of the casino. Yes, some people fly in on their jets and so forth, but most people live near the casinos. The whole strategy of casinos now is to go into basically blue-collar areas where lots of people live, who are going to, within a short drive, go to the casino, not once or twice a lifetime or once or twice a year, but 2 or 3 or 4 times a week. That's the strategy for most casinos. If they put a big one in Miami, it might be so big that maybe it would have some of the qualities that Nick is, I'm sure it would have some of the qualities Nick is describing about, the international jet set. But in general, with very few exceptions, most casinos draw upon local people. That's their whole plan. Go to any state, though, and the publicist of it, they'll say, oh, no, we're not going to hurt you. We love you. It's those other people we're going to take their money. And it's just the same thing over and over again. Finally, I'm sorry, how much more time? 1 minute. Casinos are for states that don't have any better ideas. In Nevada, it was a desert. They couldn't think of anything else to do. In my home state in Mississippi, one of the worst, poorest states, they bet their future on casinos. It's been a disaster for them. In Atlantic City, corrupt, high poverty, terribly governed, they decided, let's have casinos. If you've seen the news lately, it's a disaster. It's blowing up in their face. They're closing them all down. Casinos are for places that are desperate. Are you desperate here in Florida? I don't think, does it seem like a desperate place? It seems like a beautiful state with so much to offer and so many resources and so many wonderful things going for it. You're not desperate. You don't have to do this kind of weaselly, shady thing in order to, what, give some money to the government? to have this this activity. You can take the high road because you have a lot of natural and human and social resources to really have a road to a prosperous future that doesn't get you involved in this seedy activity. Thank you.
All righty. I'm not sure that this is on, but my father paid a lot of money for my voice to go out into a large room like this. So let me get over here. So you've heard something from both sides. Now I want you to think about it. I believe we have another one of these highly scientific, well, all right, they're not scientific at all, polls, but the whole goal of the poll is to sort of do a check at this point in time. What do you think? So we've got, Jacqueline, here it is. Yes, poll question number 2, variation on a theme. If the legislature does decide to expand casino gambling, which option would you prefer? Only destination, resort-type casinos in major cities? That would be A. Wide open casinos anywhere there is a market? That would be B. Or C, no casino gambling whatsoever. All right, only destination style, 67%. All righty.
Wide open casinos anywhere there is a market, 7%.
All righty.
And no gambling whatsoever, 26.
All right, well then let's back it up and see what the final numbers were on the first question. Can we do that? All righty. So, So we started with 52%. Was that where you started, Nick? Did you lose 3% in this already? The slightly different question. Okay, all right, there we go. See, that's how these statistics people get us, right? All righty. Well, so before we proceed and ask these gentlemen some questions, and I think there's some good discussion to be had up here, because while all of you were discussing, they were discussing. What I'd like to do at this point is I'd like Dave and Jacqueline to go around, and maybe if we could get you to report back just maybe the bullet point version of the discussion at your table. What were some of the points being made at the table? Have I got a reporter here? All righty. Here, Mr. Clement's going to provide you with a microphone.
Hey, how you doing? I think the point we were making originally was that, you know, it could bring out-of-state people, you know, to this state. However, at the same time, it would absolutely devastate, you know, some people locally if they came here consistently. Also, you had a point too. Do you know where your point was? Sorry.
Oh yes, I remember my point.
I'm just
in the business of making points.
See, you explained it a lot better. I'm sorry.
Well, the line I admired, not to suggest I didn't like your presentation as well, was casinos are an idea for states with no better ideas. And as effective as a casino might be at raising money for someone, is this the industry that Florida thinks is best to produce good, high-paying jobs that can support people better? Or it will create many jobs, don't get me wrong, but they're not high-paying jobs, they're not professional jobs, they're not jobs that require particular education. And my point was this ultimately is going to be some form of election, I would think. Constitutional amendment, referendum, help me here with that.
Not necessarily.
He'll pull it up.
Hello?
There you go.
Actually, the legislature can pass a statute that authorizes destination-style resorts or expansion at current facilities around the state. What they have typically wanted to have happen is the local government in which any of these facilities, particularly a destination resort, would be located, would have a local referendum attached to it, meaning the people of that county or their county commission on their behalf would vote before being authorized to have a bidding process in that county.
Okay.
The point was, you know, what will the campaign be to secure the vote in one of these referendums? What will they say? Will they say, well, this will help us from raising taxes, which of course is the great boogeyman in America now? Will it be that it will create new jobs, which is true to a point? It's ultimately going to be a campaign, and I can tell you from a lot of personal experience that just because it's a campaign doesn't necessarily make it truthful.
No campaign ever is.
Okay, do I have another table? Run right behind you, Mr. Clement.
Where?
Right over here.
Okay.
A couple of our points were like, you know, you use Mississippi, how in Mississippi, you know, the casinos came, but in reality, when you look at the numbers, Mississippi's still at the bottom of the ladder, you know? And then as far as gambling, as it's gonna be tax money, it's just like the lotto. It's been going on for years. It was supposed to be geared towards education, and we're still trying to find ways to fund education. So what would really be the benefit of all of this tax revenue coming in? Where is it going to go? Are you gonna take that tax revenue and what we give to education now, we're gonna put that in addition to it and not defund education somewhere else? I mean, what are the guarantees we have that it's gonna do anything for us?
Okay, do I have another comment?
There's one here.
Okay, right here, and then Jacqueline, okay?
Yeah, what we were going to say is that a general consensus is that we weren't sure necessarily it'd be a fix because we don't think Florida really has a problem. We have the beaches, there's the Florida Keys, there's Disneyland. Like, we have tourism. Florida, the state itself, is a tourist attraction. And the other consensus was to even make sense for like it to be an adult attraction, it would have to be like Vegas. Like several destination resort casinos all in one location, like a strip, where adults could go and it'd be like their Disneyland, but that would only really make sense rather than just have Miami and then just one giant big casino. You're gonna bring your kids? Like, come on. Didn't really make sense unless you do it like that, but then relaxing retirement state, and all the people want a giant like Las Vegas dead center in the Everglades, like that's not gonna work.
Okay, Jacqueline, you had somebody over here.
I must say that our table, we had quite a diverse group of individuals coming from East and West Coast, and then we also had a gambling therapist to help prevent this. So we can really see how we had quite a vast and variety of views. And if I could just systematically categorize each of your presentations, one of you talked about the strict regulations with strategic casino placement, while the other one talked about almost fruit from the poisonous tree, this tax money going towards certain individuals as well as the categoric victimization of individuals. So the question is there any harmonious balance? Is there any way to prevent the possible detriment to our community without also beneficially funding our economic activities? So the question is this even a good idea for Florida? So we had quite interesting views on this, and we had a nice variety and nice discussion.
This table right here, does somebody want to? Okay.
Are you negotiating to hire a high percentage from within the community? Because a lot of times when casinos open up, they hire for just like the lower paying jobs, and then they bring in dealers from the outside area, and they don't actually invest into the community and train within the community. So has anybody actually negotiated a package on how many people from within the state will actually be employed inside that facility? And also, the next question is on the destination resorts. Somebody pretty much said what I was thinking, but are we, define the destination resort, because are you talking like something in Biloxi, or are you talking something like Boomtown, which could have went with Indiana and didn't actually go, which would have brought in the theme park and built up a giant community around it, and then, and the regulations, who are you bringing in to design the gaming commission for the state of Florida? I mean, when they talk about strictly regulating it, who's going to be doing that? Are they going to go with like just simply what the Seminoles have been doing already? Or are they going to go with somebody from Vegas that has 50 years worth of experience to help design this for them? It does need to be strictly regulated. It takes a lot of scrutiny, constant scrutiny, just to be fair for everybody. It is a cash industry. There is constant cash going in, and there's no product coming out. So you have to constantly have an eye on the numbers of what's going on. But you can make money with casinos, but it does require just constant surveillance, you know, and I think that's pretty much it. Everybody else kind of covered what we were talking about.
Okay, I got a couple of points over here, right here.
My name is Marcy Nichols, and I just moved here about 6 months ago from Oregon, and I am an addiction therapist. I've written a book, and I'm a national trainer and a national supervisor for problem gambling. And the reason that I came here, and I saw it in the paper, is because I need to come in here and talk about the problem gamblers, because it's not really going to come out. It came out a little bit, but it's the problem gamblers that we should worry about. If one of these casinos goes in, and if it's voted in and you change your constitution, which is what a lot of states have done, then are you going to put in a certain amount or a certain percentage of these casinos' income that will come back and pay for treatment? Because in the state of Florida, the treatment is nothing. There's nothing here. I came here hoping, you know, there'd be a job, and I can't even get the council to talk to me. So there needs to be a lot of work on that side as well.
Before you give up the mic, David had some statistics that were kind of, we were like 35 to 45 or 50 talking about the percentage of people. Does that bear out? Is that your experience?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's definitely 3 to 5, you know, it's a percentage of problem gamblers. If you have destinations, we have casinos, we have Indian casinos, and when they put those into the Constitution in the 80s, well, when they voted it in, thank God the citizens had the forethought to say we want 1.5% for any problems or any addictions that come from this. Well,
It is. In most states that have this kind of...
Yes. No, there's a lot of them that couldn't get that done, so they don't have any money. And so that's what Florida Council says, we don't have any money to do anything, so we can't. But it is a higher, these destinations are not destinations, and they may do really well in the beginning, but it's just like a gambler. Over time, you can't win. It just won't win, and it will destroy an area.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, that's fortuitous. Have another country heard from here. Dave, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that about this, most states do have this idea that some of the money, 1 or 2% of the money, is going to go to treatment for problem gamblers. That's what the industry wants. That's their whole plan. That's a part of their PR strategy. Because then when somebody says, what are we going to do about the social problems, they say, oh, we've got that covered. We've got all this money going for treatment programs. And it just makes my blood boil. Think about this a minute. We're going to bring in something that will cause horrible damage in many people's lives, and we're going to do it in part so that some of the money will go for some treatment programs that will help a tiny, tiny fraction of those people. So I just want to say that with all sympathy and respect with what you're doing, I greatly admire the job that people do who work with these people. I spent a lot of time on this subject and going to the conventions and everything, but it is horrible but this was thought up by the industry itself because they didn't want to be like tobacco. Tobacco said until the last minute, they said, oh, cigarette smoking is good for you. It doesn't cause any health problems at all. But the gambling people learned from that, and so now they're going to say, oh yes, there's a tiny number of people that have these problems. We've got them covered. We're going to have this little money that goes to pay for, you're going to hear this during the ad campaigns. It should just make your blood boil. It's a PR strategy to get you to do something that you know is going to harm people on the grounds that there's going to have some little program for them.
Yeah, I want to give Nick the opportunity to respond.
I just want to, if I may. So with all due respect to you and your profession too, because the type of work that you do is valuable in this industry, and quite frankly, the industry as a whole has supported problem gaming, addiction issues by providing support financially. Florida is not doing enough, and you're absolutely correct. And the proposals that are before the legislature this 2015 session does pump a lot of money into the problem gaming programs to help those who are having problems. But I want everybody to step back for a second from the scare tactics, because that's what the opposition, and David does it very well, but that's what the opposition implores, is that the sky is going to fall if we open a casino in the state of Florida. And I want to just, I want to, hang on, you had your chance. So I want to go back and just look at the data for a second. Problem gaming. 0.5% to 2% of the population have a problem with gaming. It's unfortunate. It's a byproduct of having the product out there. There are a lot of people in society, whether it be drugs or alcohol, food, whatever it might be, have issues with addiction that need to be treated. The industry steps up with their problem gaming initiatives, training their employees, providing funding for addiction programs, et cetera, so that that small percentage of people who do have a problem gaming can seek treatment. They have self-exclusion lists in the casinos where people can actually self-report, self-exclude themselves and are not allowed in the casino. Treatment is improving, and methodologies for dealing with problem gaming are improving every year, much to the casino industry's funding of studies at Harvard and other higher education institutions to determine how to fix it. Crime. We hear crime. This is the other scare tactic we hear. I just want you people to think about, as rational and intelligent adults sitting in here for a second, because what we keep hearing is that government should not be making an evil pact with these casino companies to suck the dollar out of you and then give 1/3 of it to the government in taxes so they don't have to raise taxes. Here's the real fact. You're an adult. You're all intelligent people. You can determine how to spend your money and how to recreate yourselves, whether it's spending, hundreds of dollars at Disney at a theme park, or whether it's going in and recreating yourself at a casino, not only on the casino floor, but all the amenities offering there. Neither one, with all due respect, David, produces anything. We're not producing tires at Disney. We're not producing tires at a theme park. We're not producing tires at any of the restaurants or any of the recreational facilities that are throughout the whole state of Florida, because that's what we are. We are a tourism recreational state. So to treat one industry completely separate from all these other industries who aren't, quote, producing anything except for jobs, and actually high-paying jobs with full benefits, so much that one thing I think we always have to check ourselves, because people in this room who are highly educated and engaging in debate like this may not believe this, but there are a lot of people in Florida, over 6% still, that are unemployed that would love to have those jobs for their families. At the Hard Rock Hotel in Broward County, Florida, they had 300 positions open for their expansion. Guess how many people sat in the hot Fort Lauderdale sun for 8 hours to try and interview for those positions? Over 1,500 people. So it's elitist of us, I think, to say that these are not quality, not good paying jobs, because the fact of the matter is people need them. They want these jobs. And they are creating jobs by building these types of facilities. Crime rate. Just look at what happened here. Again, the Seminole Hard Rock Tampa, great facility. It is a Vegas-style casino, folks. It opened here. It is one of the most profitable in the world. Not in the US, but in the world. And guess what? The sky didn't fall when it opened. And I'll give you a statistic, because I pulled this, because the same scare tactics is that violent crimes are going to increase, and bankruptcies are going to increase, and divorce rates are going to increase, and the society is going to go to hell if these things open up. But let me tell you what happened. The opposite. The opposite happened. When they opened up in 2008, the violent crime dropped year over year through 2014 after the open. Year over year. Why did that happen? Because people have jobs. People don't commit crimes when they have jobs. When there's an influx of capital coming into the economy and people are employed, they don't steal. They don't rob. They don't get divorced from financial hardship. So all these scare tactics that are brought before you, just look at the data, and here's what I'll tell you to do, and I'll shut up here. But what I guess infuriates me more than anything else is when people throw out anecdotal, innuendo, scare tactics to prevent people from doing the very thing that they have fun to doing. Because when I look at that poll, where it said I think 67% of the people approve of a destination resort in a major metropolitan area, that is exactly the same type of results we get in statewide polls for destination resorts when we do them around the country. No one is asking to put a casino on every corner in the state of Florida. And to the table over there that was talking about, oh, I'm sorry, over here, somewhere over there, that was talking about putting a casino in the Everglades. We don't want to put one in the Everglades, but I actually happen to represent the Everglades Foundation too on the environmental side, and that's where we need to protect the Everglades. But in Miami, I'll give you a perfect example. One destination resort in downtown Miami, a multi-billion-dollar investment, will in fact work, will in fact draw international visitors, conventions, trade show goers, and improve the economy. And there's proof of this, and I'll give you the proof. Singapore. Singapore is an international city similar to a Miami, similar in size, similar in economic activity, similar in visitation rate. The Las Vegas Sands Corporation several years ago built the Marina Bay Sands. Look it up online, fantastic place, unbelievable architecture, iconic architecture, $5 billion investment. The GDP of Singapore since it's opened has increased by 4%. 4% of a major metropolitan area. So yeah, they're not producing tires and they're not producing widgets, but they are driving economic activity by producing these things. And the reason why people want to go travel to Singapore to go visit that place. And guess what else happened? For the restaurants and the hoteliers in Singapore, their average daily room rate went up by over 25%. The restaurant activity went up by over 25%. Why? More people, more business from the visitation. So scare tactics work with some people. The bottom line is if you look at the studies, you look at the facts, they're just not true. It's not what happens in the real world. You have it right here. And last comment I'll make, there's a report that the Florida legislature, if you want to look at actual studies and make your own determinations, because that's what you should do. You're educated people. Make your own determinations. Spectrum did a report for the Florida legislature 2 years ago. It was commissioned by the legislature to give an independent analysis of gaming throughout the United States, but also how it would affect Florida. Putting a destination resort in a market, expanding at pari-mutuel facilities, and how that impacts things. Look at the data for yourself. It's on the Florida Senate website. You can Google it, Spectrum Gaming Report, and make your own determinations. I think you'll be really surprised at what the data shows. Thank you.
Okay, so David, rebuttal?
Well, gosh, there's so many issues on the table that we've started to go back and forth on. Well, let me say one area where I think I agree with you, or I would concede the point, I think, that you say that there's adult choice and lots of people go to these casinos voluntarily. I mean, nobody makes them go, and they're popular. And I agree with you on that point, and I think that's probably the single strongest point, you know, for casino expansion, that a lot of people do go to them. So I'm not gonna. That's not a quarrel. I do find it pretty hard to take, though, when you start talking about the studies, because there isn't a single study on the planet by an independent scholar or group of scholars that shows that casinos contribute to economic growth over time. The definitive book on this is a book called Gambling in America, Cost and Benefits by Professor Earl Grinnells, who's the senior economist in the country on this issue. But there's been many other studies as well. And I'll repeat that the reason you didn't cite a study is because there isn't one. The studies consistently show, on the table over there is a book that we published that synthesizes the studies on this. Casinos over time do not contribute to economic growth and probably retard it. So while there is debate among analysts and others about what the impact would be in the future if Casino A were placed in City B, that's predicting future events, which the casino people love to predict future events. But if you look at the actual study of what's happened, and if you look at the American casino experience, I just want to say this one more time. Even my friend here, I think you fell into a misstatement. There isn't a single study that shows that casinos contribute to economic growth over time. Not one. And so this thing about jobs is a PR tactic that the casino companies use in order to get people to do this. So, well, there are many other issues, but I guess I just wanted to say that I don't believe in scare tactics. I don't believe the sky is going to fall. There are things I care about, you know, as much or more than this. I don't believe that we should decide things by anecdotes. I've spent years looking at the actual studies of this, including the economic impact. And if there's two things I would like you to take home from this, would be the numbers 40 and 0. 40 is the proportion of casino revenue that comes from problem gamblers. 40%. Well, look on there's 17 studies done by independent scholars. I'll tell you a number I've heard of that you mentioned, the 0.5% to 2%. That comes from a guy named Howard Schaefer, who was paid by the gambling industry to produce that number. It is the most laughable number in American social science today. Everybody who ever works for casinos gets up and uses that, and Howard Schaefer was paid by the gambling industry to write that paper. So give me a break. I'll stop there.
Well, all right, so I see I have some questions here, comments in the audience, so I'm going to start right back there. I'll go here, and then I'll go here. Hang on. There's plenty of time. We can get to it all. So the lady in the white jacket right here.
Okay, so while I agree with you about, you know, the whole tourism thing, you're sucking money out of the local economy, Florida is a tourism state. So a lot of our money does come from snowbirds who do not live here. Tons of our money comes in through the months after the summertime, all through the wintertime. We have a lot of people coming in to spend their money in tourism areas like Miami and Clearwater Beach and Daytona and Panama City and tons of other cities in Florida that have beaches and big attractions. Yeah, some of them are family attractions, but like in a city like Miami, throwing a big name casino, if they see MGM Grand or something like that in Miami, that's going to generate a lot of revenue for the state of Florida that is not local. Miami is not like a ton of locals wanting to go throw their money in things like that. It's an international city, and international like Singapore, like Dubai, like places like that are generating a lot of money from people that don't live there. So sucking money out of the local economy, I don't see where that would happen in Florida, especially when half the people that come here don't live here.
Okay, this gentleman over here.
Can David answer that, Susan?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Do you want to answer it?
Just, I agree with much of what you say. Nick made the same point. I'm not arguing. I don't know what would happen if Genting builds this giant casino in Miami. Maybe it's true that jet setters from overseas would come in. I'm looking at the general strategy of the American casino industry, and their strategy is to put casinos all over everywhere in order to take money mostly out of local people's pockets and in order to get rich. And they're going to take it mostly from people who live near the casinos, and they're going to take it mostly from lower income and retired people. Those facts are undisputable. Now, there could be a specific example of a super casino that's different, and I don't know. Again, it's a future thing. All I can tell you is what their current pattern is, and you have to look at the overall. Also, just as an ethical matter, is it really good to say we're going to, as long as the bad thing we're doing is done to people who don't live here, then as long as we don't do it to our own citizens, that we're going to eat somebody else's lunch before they eat ours? I mean, the ethics of this are wrong to me. If gambling is good, then we should want it all the time everywhere for everybody. If gambling is not good, then it's not good, even if somebody from Georgia comes in to do it because then they just take the problem back to Georgia. So I'm not arguing with you, and I'm not arguing with Nick about what would happen in Miami if they build the biggest, they always say this, it'll be the biggest casino ever and blah, blah, blah. I don't know, maybe it will be. But I'm looking at the general tendency in the United States. These things are mushrooming everywhere. In every state you go, they all say the same thing. No matter what state you go to, they say, this is not to take money from local people. This is going to be a resort destination super casino. They all say this everywhere. So I have a kind of a jaded attitude about it because I know factually, based on studies, that that's not what actually happens most of the time.
Hi. It's interesting to me that this argument's been couched around economics and morality. And I kind of have a problem with any legislation about adult morality. To me, adults should have advantages and opportunities to do what they like. My parents are 88 years old. They like nothing more than going to a casino. They're upright, they're not in wheelchairs. They live a vibrant life, but they no longer bowl, they no longer windsurf, they no longer go out in their boat, but by gosh, they love an evening at the casino. They have fun, they talk to people, they have a great time. My whole family loves to go to casinos. I hate it. I usually read a book in the car while they're gambling. But I absolutely support their right to go out and have a great evening on the town, to have a good time. So my question is, and I could make an ethical argument for this, using positive and negative rights, that should we be legislating morality for adults who have the opportunity to make their own choices? That's number one. I also have a question. As the legislation is being written, I know oftentimes people, like you, help write that legislation. Within that legislation, what percentage of tax are we proposing as part of that legislation, and what are those tax dollars going to go for?
So Nick, do you happen to know the specifics of the, there are, I just asked Nick earlier whether or not there were pre-filed bills. There is a pre-filed bill in the House, and there is the twin pre-filed bill in the Senate. So if you would speak to that, Nick.
Sure. Right now, it's very early in the process, but if you look at the proposals that have been there for the last several years, and if you look at what the concepts that are being talked about right now, essentially to renew the Indian Gaming Compact, the tribal compact that the Seminoles have, they're looking for additional exclusivity for a longer period of time in exchange for a greater payment. And I know it's kind of a complicated way of explaining it, but essentially right now they're paying an effective 12% tax rate. It's a scaled approach based upon their total revenue statewide. It's effectively 12%, which is a very, very generous tax rate for having a very exclusive, non-competitive environment. I expect that number to go up. I expect the tribe to want to expand the length of time they have exclusivity in exchange for a higher effect tax rate or payment. The parimutuel facilities on their Class 3 slot gaming facilities in Dade and Broward pay a 35% tax rate, plus some revenues to the local governments for local impact, traffic, things like that, which is about 5%. So they're paying an effective 40% tax rate on their slots revenues there. The destination resorts are proposing having a competitive tax rate in the 10 to 20% range in exchange for building a multi-billion-dollar resort. So tax rate's a tricky question in that the level of capital investment and tax rate are inversely proportionate. The higher the tax rate, the lower the capital investment, and the lower the tax rate, the higher capital investment. So in order to sustain a $2 billion capital investment, you can't have a 50% tax rate because you don't have enough revenues to support that capital investment, the debt servicing on that capital investment. So that's kind of the range of tax rates there. As far as where the money goes, right now, the money goes essentially just to the general revenue fund, which means the legislature makes a determination where to spend that money based upon, any given year. It's not earmarked, in effect. A gentleman earlier talked about the Florida lottery, and the funds from the Florida lottery were supposed to go to supplement education, which they do, but they played a little bait and switch game in that they took general revenue dollars that were being used for education, the lottery dollars are actually earmarked for education, so they had to spend those dollars on education, but used the monies before to go towards something else. There's nothing that says the legislature can't earmark casino revenues to go towards specifically education, which would then be forced to supplant what the lottery is already doing, to add on what the lottery was already doing. But as of right now, those decisions aren't being made as far as where the actual money is going to be spent.
Okay. May I respond to the?
Sure.
Because I think that it's really maybe the most important divide, the most interesting part of the discussion. We were saying before that, this issue, when you said you don't believe in legislating adult moral decisions, I think it really does touch upon the thing. And I admit that there is this strong argument for adult choice, and of course we live in the land of the free, and you're supposed to let people kind of, to some broad degree, do what they want to do, and a lot of people like to go to casinos. Your parents do. But I would give you a little bit of pushback. There are many, many activities of a moral nature concerning adults that we do regulate quite strictly, and I'm sure you wouldn't disapprove of them. For example, you can't open up a house of prostitution in your basement and run that, even if you restrict it only to adults. You can't enjoy yourself recreationally by watching child pornography. You can't sell drugs to other consenting adults just because they want to buy the drugs. You can't, in my home state, there are many, many kinds of financial fraud. In my home state of New York, where I live now, there are certain kinds of these payday loans, these high-interest short-term loans. They're not allowed. They're just not, because it's a form of predatory. It's viewed as even though nobody makes you go to these modern-day loan sharks and get the money. So these are ethical choices on restricting certain business activities that adults can engage in with other adults. And I'm sure that on the list I just mentioned, you're not for legalizing all these activities. So it's always well, you may be, but I mean, let's just say I certainly am not. And you would have to be a pretty extreme libertarian to believe that there aren't any boundaries at all in this area. And so my argument about gambling is I believe that the slot machines in particular are similar to the loan sharking and to the payday lending and to the rent-to-owns and other forms of financial exploitation, because it's just taking your money, it's highly deceptive, it preys upon weakness and vulnerability, and I believe that it's a close call. I mean, it's a judgment call, but I think that ethically, in terms of good citizenship, the state should not sponsor and aid and abet this activity. Even though it is a regulation of adult moral choice.
Right, so I had a hand over here, and then we'll move over here. Okay, so sir, yes.
I'm glad to hear that they're at least opening up that opportunity to other people and contracts from other companies or whatever. But what exactly is the determination for them okaying the actual contract with whatever company it is that you work for? And also, my other sort of sideline on this was, I didn't realize that this was even open. Now opening this can of worms and allowing the bigger casinos to make bids towards this makes it into a little bit of a little fight in the sandbox, if you ask me. So I really can't understand why we can't just leave it the way it is and just let the Indians have the casinos, because we did exterminate them after all and take their land. So, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let them have their contract, because we're just going to fight over the money anyways. So where's it really going to go? You know, we can't even really say that it's going to go to education. We can't. Well, we built that. They taxed us to build Tropicana Stadium. Now they're going to tear that down, I'm sure, within the next, 10 years. We're going to lose the baseball team. So all of these things is just really why break it? It's doesn't need to be fixed.
Sir? Yes, hang on. Yes.
Good question. So number one, I think it's a fundamental belief in competition. So you can either, right now what we have is a situation where we have one party who has exclusive rights to offer gaming in this area, for example, free from competition, and providing a benefit, a tax benefit or a payment benefit to the state, but at a very low level in exchange for the revenues that they're getting. So when you, number one, they haven't opened it up to anybody yet. It's under consideration. The legislature has to vote on it this upcoming legislative session. But it's a fundamental belief that if you have these companies, including the Seminole tribe, who are very formidable competitors in this industry, but if you have those folks competing with some of the national and international companies that build destination-style resorts in a competitive bid process, when there's only one or two of these permits made available, it'll produce the best product. So Florida, for example, is a best-in-class state for a lot of things, particularly when it comes to entertainment. But as I started off in the beginning of my presentation, our gaming offering, and I'll agree with David on this, our gaming offering is bleak. And unfortunately, when you don't allow for competition, when you don't create a regulatory system that allows folks to come in and build high-quality facilities, the type of facilities that are built do cater toward the low-income folks, probably the folks that shouldn't be in there. But the high-class facilities that cater to the jet setters, or that, it's $20 just to valet park and walk in the place, is not going to attract the clientele that shouldn't be in there. It's the people that can afford to be there, that can afford to recreate themselves in there. And that competition model is what drives the economic benefits that we've talked about. So it's whether you believe in competition or not, essentially.
I got multiple hands, so let me be fair to this side of the room. And you, sir, I know you've been hanging on. So, Jacqueline, the gentleman with the orange tie here. Would you take the microphone to him? Yeah. All right. Sorry. Hang on.
I so much enjoy listening to you both. I say that respectfully. But you, Mr. IRSC, were talking about when they opened up the Hard Rock Casino in Tampa and how crime statistics essentially reduced with each year. At first I thought you were making the argument, see, the sky didn't fall down. But then I heard you say, and you know why? It's because people had jobs. And when they have jobs, they don't go out and commit crimes. So my question is, were you making a direct connection between the opening of a casino and the reduction of crime in Tampa?
I don't know what the cause of the reduction in crime was post opening of the casino. The point I was trying to make is that when you have a large casino opening in an urban environment such as Tampa, that it doesn't automatically result in increases in crime, divorce rates, suicide rates, all the kind of scare statistics that you hear from folks who are anti-gaming and who are against casinos. That's all. So the correlation, I don't know what the correlation is. I'm just telling you that it's not that cut and dry. And if you look at not just here, but if you look at other markets such as Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, for example, where a destination casino was built in a old steel town that has been decimated by unemployment because Bethlehem Steel went out of business. Well, right now they've got $1 billion resort and the place is booming. Businesses are popping up all over Bethlehem. Again, crime is down, suicide rates are down, all those scare tactics, statistics are down. If you talk to the police chief there, if you talk to Mayor Callahan there, he'll tell you what a booming economic engine it has been that brought Bethlehem back from the doldrums. So all I'm telling you is, no, I agree. And so I'm giving you two specific scenarios. One, an economic ruin that brought it out, and another that a destination resort, and this is an important point to understand because this is the point I'm trying to make, a destination resort done properly in an urban environment works. It doesn't harm the existing businesses and the existing economy, and as a matter of fact, it grows it.
Just very quickly, look, violent crime has been falling nationwide for years in every state, across this broad land of ours. So would it be a surprise that it also fell in the state that had this casino? So it's really kind of a joke to try to say that crime, and the criminologists don't know why it's falling. Maybe the reason crime is falling nationwide is because we have more casinos, but I have seen no evidence in the scholarly literature of this. And I've kind of had it about using this term scare tactic statistics, because unlike your side, my side actually does have independent studies. And I'm not trying to flog my own study, but I co-authored this little booklet. They're free over there. Take it home and look for yourself. Look up the studies.
Funded by whom?
Funded by a diversity of universities, federal agencies across the board, independent scholars, unlike the paid workers of the gambling industry who do things. Independent researchers have consistently found that there is a correlation between presence of a casino and spikes in crime. Now, is this some kind of anecdotal scare tactic? Hell no, it isn't. It's based on good social science research. The citations are over there. If you have studies that show something different, I'm happy to see them, because they don't exist. The independent evidence does show consistent correlations. It doesn't. Now, this doesn't predict that crime is going to spike in Miami if a casino goes there, but it just shows a pattern that independent scholars have said. These aren't anecdotes. This isn't a scare tactic. I'm not saying we're all gonna, have to go underground. I'm just saying that independent scholarship shows a correlation between casino presence and an increase in crime. And there isn't any way to talk one's way out of that social science fact.
Okay, I have a couple others. Let's see. I had one here, this gentleman here, this lady here, this gentleman here, and then this lady here. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4.
For the sake of disclosure, how is Mr. Blankenhorn's efforts financed?
I work for an independent think tank, and we are funded by a variety of private foundations, 20 or 30. We file a 990 every year. You're welcome to go and see who we get our funding from. We do, so I mean, I'm not even sure why you want to ask the question. If you think I'm being paid for by some lobbyist, I'm not. But it's a matter of public record. It's in a think tank's been around for 25 years, and all our donors are readily available for you to examine to your heart's content.
Okay, great, thank you. This young lady right here.
Am I next?
Go ahead.
Okay.
We'll catch you up in a minute. Okay.
I'm not wearing a skirt.
Oh, sorry. I've obviously lost the ball here.
My name is Gene Stern, and I'm not really for gambling, but that has nothing to do with what I'm going to say. David, I think you're fighting a losing battle. It's passionate, it's moral. It has nothing to do with what's really happening here. It's all about money. Gambling's already here. You can't put the cat back in the bag. It's already out. As was just stated, it's all about competition. Charlie Crist did a bad job with the Seminoles.
Do you feel that way about cigarettes?
Wait a minute. Let me just finish my statement. He did a bad job with the Seminoles. So the point is, in order to get more money, you have to have competition, or the threat of competition. So, in my opinion, we're already, you said, the third largest gambling state in the country. I don't think it's going to bring any more people into this state. We're already a destination. It's all about the money, David. So your arguments, as much as I believe in them, and I think they're moral, they're for a state that doesn't have gambling.
Well, that may be. I mean, you make a valid point that you already have a lot of it, and therefore what can be done. But I would just say, I wonder if you feel that way about cigarettes. In other words, lots of people already smoke cigarettes. We already many people have, over the centuries, enjoyed cigarette smoking. Therefore, we should have more cigarette smoking. More people should be able to enjoy cigarettes, because after all, it's already here. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, so why not have more cigarettes? Or why not at least get off this anti-smoking kick and stop having the doctors go around and tell people and have, why just stop doing that? We already have cigarette smoking. We already have drunk driving. People have been drinking and driving forever. We already have it. Everybody knows that it already exists. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Stop telling people about this. Let's have more drinking and driving, because after all, we already have it.
I have this young lady in the gray sweater right here.
So from what I've been able to determine from the scintillating discussion is that gambling is like these pieces of chocolate cake that are sitting at all our tables. It's enjoyable, it's somewhat satisfying, but in the long run, we know it's not a healthy diet. And so statistically speaking, right now in Florida, we could say that there's a piece of chocolate cake at every seat at 2 of these tables. And I noticed you mentioned competition, and one of the fundamental theories of competition is if you flood the market, it will initially rise, but however, over time, it will equal out. So if we have now chocolate cakes at all these tables, while originally we only had 2 tables full of chocolate cake, those 2 tables were high in demand. They were generating a lot of money, just like our Hard Rock Casino, but now we're flooding the market. Now, statistically speaking, all the tables will have people wanting to sit at them. So what I'm basically or essentially asking is, while I know the cat's already out of the bag, we just need to put it on the leash. So what I'm asking is it really necessary to now almost put someone who's addicted to gambling, for instance, that could be a sure addicted diabetic. Right now, we only have 2 tables full of chocolate cake. There's a good chance a diabetic can avoid those 2 tables, but now we're flooding the market. So there's a lot of tangible and non-tangible things that have to be taken into account. So what I'm asking, is there any way to meet in the middle, or maybe possibly say we need to put more money into the preventative measures if we're going to also equal out this additional gambling, as well as, is it really going to be long-term beneficial, because the market will equal out. That's one of the fundamental theories of Adam Smith's model of competition. So is there really any way that there's a win-win situation on both sides?
Okay.
Oh, great point. So it's a great question, and the answer is yes. And I think you've seen a little bit of that, and I think it's adequately reflected in the last poll that you had, and that is a limited number of highly competitively chosen facilities in the state, chosen to be placed in locations where the communities want them, where they approve of them, that are tailored to draw out-of-state and out-of-country visitors, where they can come, spend money, recreate themselves, where it draws people to that existing economy to grow the market, and is highly, highly regulated. Right now, Florida has a very deficient regulatory system when it comes to gaming. We need a gaming commission very similar to a Las Vegas, or Nevada, a New Jersey, a Pennsylvania. Extremely strict regulation. They need to fix the regulatory environment here. They need to foster a competitive environment, because right now, the way things are, it's not really competitive because the regulatory structure here is so limited, with a very high tax rate for non-tribal facilities, that it's like having 2 tables with a little nibble of chocolate at each table. People really can't get to it because they can't provide enough product, because the level of taxation is so high that they can't build a facility that people really want to go to. So what we're advocating for, and generally what the out-of-state, especially casinos, are advocating for, and what the pari-mutuels are advocating for, is create a regulatory structure with a competitive tax rate so they can build facilities that you'd be proud of, that you'd want to go to. If you go to Las Vegas, for example, on the Strip, there are the big destination resort-style casinos, the Wynn's, the Venetians, the Palazzos, the MGM, and Caesars that you see. But if you go into the neighborhoods, there are casinos in the neighborhoods. And those casinos, yes, have a casino, but you know what else they have? They have bowling alleys, they have movie theaters, they have restaurants, they have shows, they have hotels attached to them, and they become local entertainment venues where people go, they bring their families there, they bring out-of-town guests there, they go there with their husbands or wives on dates. Those are the type of facilities that can be built with a good regulatory structure at the current locations. You don't necessarily have to expand the gaming footprint of Florida. So in other words, you don't have to add a bunch of locations to what is already here, since we do have so much. But what you do need to do is improve the regulatory environment so that people can invest here, improve the quality of the offering.
Dave, you want to respond to Alexis's question?
I agree. It's a very good question. I don't agree with Nick that there, or maybe I disagree with both of you. I don't think there's a win-win middle ground solution. The gambling, the modern casino was invented in the 1940s by mobsters in Nevada. They created this institution. So that's how old it is. And since that first casino was made by the first mobster in Nevada, there's one constant thing that they've always said. We want to build this one, and that's it. That they've said that there has never been a time when they haven't said that. It's just this one more thing, and that's it. Because after all, we don't want blah, blah, blah. We want to protect it. We don't want to have too much chocolate cake at your table. So they always, always, always say this. And it has never been true. It was not true when the first mobster built the first casino in the desert, and it is not true today in Florida. Because as soon as the industry gets what it wants here in Florida, it will do exactly what it has done every time in previous moments of Florida history, in previous moments of American history. It'll say, we now want to do this other thing, but that's all we want to do, no more. So forgive me, but I don't believe it for a minute that this is all they want to do. Because it's not, and also, I have to laugh when I hear about this strict regulation. Most of these casinos are pretty much alike. All the games are the same. There's a complete homogeneity about them. The regulators are the servants of the industry. In my home state of Mississippi, the way they train you to be a regulator is you go work for a casino for a while. So the idea that somehow the regulators are going to protect the public health, it is hilarious.
Susan, may I take a director's privilege to ask a follow-up on David's point about what he just said as relates to Atlantic City? We're seeing casinos go bankrupt, big, huge Trump Tower casinos. To what do you attribute that? I'd like each of you to talk about that state, that city.
Sure. Yeah, the main reason is saturation in the Northeast. In David's home state of, well, newly adopted home state, not Mississippi, but of New York, they just authorized 5 casinos throughout the state of New York. If you look at Connecticut, you look at Washington, D.C., Maryland, Pennsylvania is a big one. Pennsylvania has done the most harm to Atlantic City. When Atlantic City was created, you have to remember, there was nothing else in the United States of America. There were no other gaming establishments. There wasn't Las Vegas. There wasn't, it was, and then it was Atlantic City and Las Vegas, and those were the only 2 areas. People on the West Coast went to Las Vegas. Everyone in the Northeast and on the East Coast went to Atlantic City. Those were the 2 places to go. It's not the case anymore. The competition and the saturation, particularly in the Northeast, as David can tell you, is tremendous. And there is a saturation point. So to go back to the woman's point earlier about how many pieces of cake to have, there is a tipping point, which is why government regulation is important to determine whether or not the market can handle a certain number of casinos, because you don't want them going out of business like what happened in Atlantic City. You don't want people losing their jobs as a result of that. But what happened is the United States outgrew Atlantic City. They put establishments up all over the place where people no longer had to travel to Atlantic City. They could go within an hour drive of home and go to a better facility that's newer and nicer and has better amenities. And so Atlantic City threw a Hail Mary back in '76 when they authorized casinos. They had 3 straight decades of population decline in Atlantic City, New Jersey. They needed to do something. They had shot down casinos 3 times in a row, didn't authorize them. In '76, things got so bad there and the economy was so horrible and people were fleeing the area that they finally, out of desperation, authorized casinos. And it was a boom. I mean, for decades, it was a boom. Jobs, economy, market. Atlantic City was glitz and glamour. It worked. But what happened is they didn't continue to invent themselves, to reinvest in the product, and then everything opened up around them competitively, and that sunk them.
Well, I agree with Nick about the reasons for the decline in Atlantic City casinos, but I very strongly disagree with him that that was a success in Atlantic City. Poverty rates are higher in Atlantic City today than they were before the casinos came in. The neighborhoods are crummier. There's more suffering. There's more human suffering per capita now than there was before they brought the casinos in. Walk around Atlantic City and you won't think you're in a place where a good experiment took place. There's also a lesson here for any place that doesn't have casinos, because I do agree with Nick that the reason I think he got it right, why these casinos are closing in Atlantic City, but the states that make money at the beginning are the ones that make money. You know, Atlantic City got in early. My original state, Mississippi, they were one of the first states in the South to do this, and they went all in. Of course, Nevada was the first state in the country. So if you're early, you're the only game in town, literally, for your whole region, then yeah, you're going to do well at the beginning. But eventually, other people do the same thing. Saturation occurs, revenues decline. Mississippi casinos are losing their shirts now. Their revenue is sinking down because after years of money, now all the surrounding states have them. So what does this tell you here in Florida? You can't be an early adapter. You're surrounded by casinos. You're not going to ever benefit from this idea, oh, we're the first ones in. You're one of the latter ones in for this method, and so you may have all of the problems and disadvantages and broken dreams without any of that early thing of being the only game in town.
Susan,
I saw a
this is
question
going to
right
be the
back
last
here.
question.
Is this a last question? Absolutely, right there.
Yes, we're on a college campus right now, and I think it would be best if we started with the actual demographic of who they expect to spend the money in these casinos. Is it going to be jet-setting people from Dubai, or is it going to be a lot of people from the local community? And our lobbyist gentleman up there said, this is discretionary income. This might not be discretionary income for many of the people that are coming. It could be the check comes in for Social Security, or the monthly whatever income check comes in. That could be the money for the medicine for the family, for the heat bill, for the food. So I think we need to start this in a more educated way and be honest about, you know, an addiction to gambling. An addiction, you want to invite something into your community that can create an addiction. As an educated person, that doesn't sound like a good idea. And the last thing I'll say is, I think because we're on a college campus, I think Florida workers deserve better jobs than in a gambling casino. We think more highly of ourselves than to think, a job, a gambling job. That's not why we're on a campus. We think that we can do better for our young people and people in general.
So I'm going to ask both of my speakers here for a quick summation, because we're about to send people out. If you have a commission for these people in terms of what you think they should look at in order to educate themselves more, please give them that commission. So Nick, you want to tell them where they should look to learn more about it?
Sure, I'm happy to. Number one, I think what we've developed here is that, and it's kind of a reflection of your polling, is that this can be done correctly. It can be done in a limited fashion, highly regulated, benefit the economy, and benefit the amount of tourist offerings that we're trying to draw people in from out of state that complements our current offerings. As far as literature goes, again, I really direct you to the Florida Senate website. Look at the Spectrum Gaming Report, SPECTRUM, Spectrum Gaming Report. And I think what you'll find is, at best, all the studies that David has talked about earlier that show all the horrors of gaming come in are inconclusive. Because for every study that shows there are problems associated with gaming, there's another study that shows there's an economic benefit or that those problems are overstated. And this is a very well done report, again, independently done by the legislature, not paid for to some college professor who is taking the money to do the report, or to an institute who is taking money to do the report. It's unbiased. It's done by the Florida legislature. They have, yeah, believe it or not. No, and it's funny, you can laugh that off, David, but the fact of the matter is they haven't passed a gaming bill in 6 years, even after this report. So the fact of the matter is this is a very well done report. It's all cited, so you can go back and check your academics on this. It's all cited. I encourage you to read it because I think you'll find, again, if done correctly, with the right type of model, Florida can benefit dramatically from it. It can be done in a safe, effective way where adults can go entertain themselves. And all the ills associated with the scare tactics provided by folks who are opposed to casino gaming, these studies show in here that are all cited that it's just not true.
All right.
So thanks for hearing us out, though.
Thank you. David, last word.
Well, in honor of the academic presence, I'll just make two of those kind of academic points. It's simply untrue that for every independent study showing a problem with gambling, there's one showing a benefit. It is simply not true. The independent studies are overwhelming on this. Of course there are. The studies that are paid for by the gambling industries, your employer, is the same as the tobacco companies that used to produce studies showing how wonderful cigarettes are.
People who oppose gaming funding studies of independent researchers is just as biased.
No, there isn't any vested interest. I don't stand to make money by having or not having casinos, whereas your employers stand to make billions by having casinos. That's the difference. And on the scholarship, I would suggest if you want to separate the wheat from the chaff, one way to do it is not to look at predictions of future occurrence. The gambling people love to make predictions, wonderful predictions about things that are going to happen in the future. The Spectrum report is largely about things that are likely to happen in the future under condition A or condition B. It's much better, I think, to look at what has actually already happened in our recent history. And the little booklet on the table probably lists of 70 or 80 studies that can give you that information. Not a prediction, but an actual analysis. In just last point, I want to thank Nick for being here and thank everybody for doing this. And the last thing I want to say is, to me, I know we've been arguing here a little bit about studies, but to me, this ultimately is an ethical question. It's a question of, do we as citizens of America, do we American people want our government to raise a substantial portion of its revenue in this way? Now that has an economic dimension to it, but ultimately to me it's ethical, because I don't believe that essentially cheating unwary people of lower income out of billions of their dollars to pay for our services, and that's what we're doing, I don't believe that is an ethically wise way for government to operate. And so, we can argue and have footnotes about what is or isn't a valid study, but I would just say, if I had to urge you to do one thing, it would be to try to get a little elevation and just try to think of yourself as a citizen whose government is doing something in your name, and does it make you proud?
Well, I'm going to turn the podium back over to Mr. Clement. I want to say thank you to both of you. I've enjoyed it, I've learned it, and I do have a small assignment for all of you. Go on the Florida Legislature's website, find the 2 current bills, tickle that in your bill tracker, and watch the progress of that legislation as pieces get added to it or taken away from it, so that you'll know what we're actually talking about as this piece of legislation moves forward. At the same time, there will be lots of people weighing in, so you'll have lots of opportunities to learn more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Demers, and thank you, panel. Again, may we have a round of applause for our moderator who kept us on track and the panel. And as always, I want to pay tribute to the staff who, of the Institute and the college who made this possible. Jacqueline Schuett, Shantae Williams of my staff, volunteers Tom Gorgon, Patricia Winden, Doris Burns, and from the Seminole staff, technology staff, Jonathan Sullivan on the soundboard, and Jeremy Peplow at the video camera. And thank you all very much. Just a quick word about our next Village Square program. It's one you won't want to miss on another topic of great interest, same-sex marriage. You know that the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, has now decided to hear it in April and rule in June or so. We're going to be talking about that in late March on the 26th, and it will probably be very hot in the news at that point. And then on April 22nd, we're going to stage our second Speed Date Your Local Leaders, this time for leaders of St. Petersburg, and that will be downtown at the Museum of Fine Arts. And when we did that in Clearwater in December, it was a lot of fun. People get to spend 7 minutes with one of their with a dozen or 15 of their local leaders, asking them questions face to face that you seldom get a chance to do. Thank you all for coming, and have a safe journey home. And thank you all.